like to know about other programs, you can go to the nationalartsclub.org or check us out on Facebook. So my name is David Zyla, and I'd like to welcome you today. And today we have a very special guest with us. So we are focusing on a lot of different categories of fashion. And we thought, well, we have to talk about modeling. And we thought, who better to do it with but the one and only Carol.Alt. Carol.Alt was born in New York and is one of the most successful supermodels of all time. She was first introduced to modeling when she was noticed waiting tables and decided to model as a summer job. She found success quickly. Almost straight after entering the industry, she was featured on the cover of Harper's Bazaar and went on to be a favorite for magazine covers, appearing in more than 700 magazines, including Sports Illustrated, Vogue, Cosmopolitan, Mademoiselle, and she also appeared in Playboy, and she was given the high accolade of Most Beautiful Woman in the World, and also referred to as the face by Life magazine. As well as appearing on nearly every top fashion magazine, Carol was also a frequent face on the catwalk, walking for designers such as Calvin Klein and Ralph Lauren. Some of her most memorable and reputed work has been on as the face for an impressive list of high-end brands, including Lancome, Covergirl, Pepsi, Hanes, and Noxzema. More than working as a model, Carol transformed the entire idea of what a model is. John Casablancas described her as the model that started the supermodel trend. This high praise is down to Carol's ingenious entrepreneurial spirit. She was the first model to commission posters and calendars, and it sparked a movement in modeling to popularize a model as a brand. Towards the end of the 80s, Carol made the move from modeling to acting and went on to have a successful acting career, including starring roles in Snakehead Terror and in the TV series Amazon. In 2008, Carol appeared in Playboy's December issue. The same year, she was number 5 on AskMen.com's top 10 models of all time. She made a return to her modeling roots and now works as an ambassador for the industry. She's a spokesperson for many projects and has also become a consultant to skincare line La Mirador. In addition, Carol is also the best-selling author of 2 books on her own raw food diet plans. She's also moved into fiction writing with her debut novel, The Year's Model, in 2008, and the sequel, Model Incorporated. Continuing her interest in raw products, in 2008, Carol also launched a skincare and beauty line, Raw Essentials by Carol.Alt, and appeared as a contestant on The Celebrity Apprentice, competing for her charity, the Tony Alt Memorial Foundation. Please welcome Carol.Alt.
Hi, David. Oh my goodness, I learned so much about me from you.
So what haven't you done?
It's funny. Roger Ailes from Fox News asked me the same thing one day over lunch, and I looked across the table and I said, I haven't worked for you. And that's how I got my show, A Healthy You, on Fox News.
That's how it happens. So all you have to say is, I didn't do this, and it will happen.
Be careful what you ask.
Oh my goodness. So I have so many questions for you today. And we're also, after we chat, we're going to open this up to our fabulous audience. So I encourage the people watching to write your questions in. We'll get to them in a little bit. So Carol, I'm wondering if we kind of start at the beginning of your career today. And I wondered if you would tell us just a little bit about how Harper's Bazaar happened, that first big break, what the shoot was like, and I guess what I really want to know is, what did you learn on that day?
Well, I have to tell you that the very first shoot was the very first day of modeling. So I went in and I saw the agency on May 31st, 1979. And June 1st, they sent me to go see Harper's Bazaar. And I'll never forget, I walked in, the editor was late, I was standing around, I was worried about my other appointments because I had a lot of go-sees that day. And of course, you don't want to be late, you don't want the agency to be upset, it's my first day. And the woman walked in and she said, "Thank you for waiting, you're too big for our clothes, your hair looks like SHIT, and who the hell plucked your eyebrows? Thank you, goodbye." And the photographer was John Stember, and I'll never forget it because John was into TM and all kinds of very esoterical things. And he argued with her, and they went up into a loft. So it wasn't even like they were in a room, they were in a loft. I could hear everything. And I was sitting chatting with one of the guys who was doing the lighting and whatnot. And he goes, "Doesn't that bother you?" And I said, "Not really. I'm in the Army and I'm going back to school in the fall. So if this doesn't work out, I'm waiting for a scholarship through the Army ROTC to go to Hofstra. So if this doesn't work out, it's not, no big deal." He goes, "This would kill me." I was like, "No, I'm just worried about missing my other appointments. Do you think I could use the phone?" So I used the phone. The agency said, "Don't worry about it, stay." And the editor came down and said, "All right, well, sit in the corner over there. We'll call you if we need you." And the photographer came down and said, "Go get makeup done." And I'll never forget because the makeup artist was Rex, and Rex had, I think it was polio when he was a child. He was just such an inspiration to me because he had a hand that was like this, and he was doing my makeup, and he did the most gorgeous makeup, and he did my hair. And I thought, this man is just, this is what this industry is like with all these amazing, incredible people. This is something I want part of. So he did my makeup and hair, telling me the whole time, "You look beautiful, you look beautiful." I'm like, why is this guy telling me I look beautiful? I didn't really care. And I'll never forget getting on the set, and just, it was such freedom. I could be whoever I wanted to be. I could do whatever I wanted to do. And they were just, I was just a freedom, a release of such creative energy. And when I walked off the set, the editor, her name was Lizette Catan, said, "We'd like to take you to the collections if you can lose this amount of weight by July 19th. So I had about a month and a half to lose the weight. And that was my first day, and I got a cover from it. So it was very nice.
That is probably the most incredible first day I've ever heard.
Well, actually, it got better. On the way home, my girlfriend was coming from Maryland to stay with me. So I asked my father, "Can you come and pick me up at another train station?" Because I couldn't get one quick enough to my town. And on the train, I don't know if you remember Harry Chapin. He was a wonderful songwriter and singer in the 70s. And he wrote a song that I love called Taxi. And he was on the train. He had all his guitars and all his stuff. He had just come off a European tour. And I'm like, "What are you doing on the train?" He goes, "What are you doing on the train?" Because I was all made up. I had makeup and hair, and I had kept it so my father could see it.
Did he compose a song for you?
No, he invited me to a charity benefit that he was doing at Nassau Coliseum. And I said, "Can you sign the flowers?" I'd gotten flowers from my mother that day. And because I had my first job, and I said, "Do you think you could sign this? My brother will never believe I ran into you on the train." And he signed it for me. He said, "I just didn't feel like waiting for the limos. And I just jumped the train because it was just faster." And I thought, this guy's really cool. Unfortunately, the concert that he asked me to go to was the concert that he was driving to when he was killed on the Long Island Expressway.
Oh gosh.
Yeah. So, but the day was just so incredible. And I stepped off the train. I think my father almost had a heart attack because here I was, like, I look like a Grecian goddess with like this makeup and this hair, and it was just fabulous.
What a happy day in your house, I'm sure. Wow.
Yeah, it was great.
Amazing story. So you mentioned the hair and the makeup, and clearly there are, in a photo shoot, there are clothes involved. I'm curious, how do the clothes that you're wearing as a model inform the work, whether it's a photograph or a runway?
This is something that I've kept through my entire career. It's a great question, David. It totally tells me the mood, and it totally informs a character. And I started out modeling like that. If it's fun and flouncy, I'm fun and flouncy. If it's beautiful and elegant, I feel sexy in it. It's always informed me. And right through my acting career, I've done maybe 60 films, I think. I'm not sure, but at least up there somewhere. And, you know, the crazy thing is that I always like to see how my stylist fashioned my character, how they saw the character. And I used some of that to inform who I was. So it's been something that has stayed with me through my entire career. I think the clothes dictate quite a bit of the person.
Excellent.
And the character, yeah.
Yeah, excellent. So could you talk a little bit about the collaboration between a model and a photographer?
Oh, absolutely. You know, I speak to a photographer through the lens. So we are in constant communication. He's telling me what he's seeing and how he wants it changed or moved, and I am giving it back non-verbally through the camera. And this is the most intimate of relationships, really. So I've always had a great relationship with the photographers I've worked with. I've never really worked with one that I didn't feel inspired by. And if I didn't, which I can't even remember one that didn't, but then you would take inspiration from the clothing and from the lighting and from the mood and the other people in the room. But that relationship, we're speaking to each other directly. And I've seen photographers get mad when an assistant would speak to me. I could tell he would feel that that was an interruption of this communication.
So it's a very intimate relationship.
Very intimate, yes.
Between literally two individuals.
Right, because you're creating all the things that go on before I step on the set is my team behind the scenes. That's communication with them. We work, we choose things. I like this, I don't like this. We need to shoot this, we don't need to shoot that. And that's, you know, I like my hair like this. Can you add a little bit more color to the lips? You know, it's a collaboration. Once I get on the set, those people go silent. The whole team goes silent, and the photographer runs the show. He's my director, and you know he'll tell a makeup artist she's shiny, and he'll run in and powder me down. But once that camera starts clicking, it's just me and him, and no one else.
So interesting. So as you are hailed best of the best in your industry,
very kind of you.
I'm curious. What would you say the qualities of being a great model are? What do you need to possess?
Yeah, there's so many. I wouldn't say there's one quality, because as I was moving along in my career, I would see what would happen to other girls. For example, I remember starting with a girl that very first day. There was a girl named Amy in the studio with me, and Amy had this fabulous book. I mean, I was impressed. I'm looking at this, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I mean, she looks so beautiful in these pictures. And 2 months later, I'm in a studio with Patrick de Marchelier with this fabulous makeup artist named Sophie, and in walks Susie on a go-see. And I turned to Sophie and I said, Sophie, I don't understand. This girl had better photos than I did. On June 1st, I saw her book. Why is she still doing go-sees? And I'm booked literally every day. And she just put her nose up in the air like this. And I realized people don't like people who are snobby. They don't want to work in a studio with people who are difficult. This is a business, regardless of it, once you get to be a star and how everything changes when you're a star. This is a collaborative business. And if you don't bring anything to the party, don't come. I've also seen girls who've complained. I can choose the days I work. I can choose who I work for. I can choose the money I make. Everything is up to me. So if I'm in a studio, why am I complaining? And there were girls who were in the studio complaining, and all I thought was, then don't take the job. Don't take the job. Don't come. If you can't bring something to the party that makes everybody in the studio happy to be there with you, then don't come. So there were many, many, many things. You know, I also think it was, you know, an attitude within your own mind. I always wanted people, when they looked in my eyes in a photo, to know how much I loved what I was doing. I communicated that through the camera, through the photographer, to my audience. I loved what I was doing. That's where my posters and calendars and exercise videos came from. I loved what I was doing. I was trying to prolong my career. I just adored being in the studio. Days, nights, weekends, I worked everything because I just really liked being there. It was so much fun. And having grown up in a military family, and you know, my mother was very tough. My father was also a fire chief in the South Bronx. I mean, my mother wanted me to take another 2 languages. Why are you taking art? You should be taking calculus. I mean, she was a tough cookie, you know, bless her, because she's created who I am. But all of a sudden, to be in a business where I could just be creative, it was great. But at the same time, a lot of the people were always like, well, you know, you're a model, you can't act, or you're a model, you can't do this. And I almost forgot who I was. I almost forgot I'm creative in other ways. I can write stories and I can do things, because people try to put you in a box. Oh, she's stupid and because she's beautiful. And I fought that my whole career. The minute they said, no, you can't do that, you're a model, was the minute I tried to do it.
It's all you needed to hear.
That was all I needed to hear is no.
So we talked a little bit about how the clothes create a character. Have you ever had to wear something that you absolutely disliked? And how do you work around something like that?
It was funny because I remember, you know, sometimes you'd have a half a day at a shoot. You'd be at another shoot in the morning, then you go to another shoot in the afternoon at a different studio. And I remember walking in and several times, I mean, this happened all the time, and the stylist saying, oh, thank God you're here. I saved all the ugly stuff for you. And that for me was the best compliment, because what she was saying to me is I'm the only one who can make them look good, because I didn't judge anything. It wasn't like I looked at something and said, oh, that's disgusting, I don't like yellow. I said, okay, let's do it. For me, my job was to make that outfit look good. My personal feelings about that outfit did not matter at all. And I knew that. So it never bothered me to be the one that she saved the ugly outfits for, because I could. That was a gift I had. I could make it look good no matter what it was. And there were a lot of ugly outfits. Believe me, we were talking about the 80s here. There was a lot of ugly outfits, but it didn't bother me. That was the challenge. Yeah.
As someone who is wearing all of these fabulous clothes day in, day out.
And not so fabulous clothes.
Well, and some maybe not. But how did that influence your own personal style, or did it?
I had no personal style. I had none. You have to remember, I came as a kid from the military, really. I came right out of high school. I went through 1 year of college. I had, my father was a fire chief of the South Bronx. He was in the military as well. And, he had 4 kids in college basically at the same time. So it wasn't like I was walking around college in like the coolest outfits. Anything I wanted, I worked for. I worked as a babysitter since I was 10. At 13, I started working in a bakery. So, I saved my money. And if I wanted something, I had to go and buy it for myself. And I wasn't really all that inspired by fashion. For me and in my family, it was all about being smart, doing well in school. It wasn't about, my sisters are gorgeous. I have 2 gorgeous blonde sisters. It was never about being beautiful outside. It was always about what you were like inside, giving everything 100%. Everybody who works with anybody in my family, and including my brother, God rest his soul, never wanted us to leave, because we all give 110%. My younger sister is a lawyer. She works at a law firm. Sorry, she's a paralegal. And every law firm she goes into says they won't let her leave, even if she's there part-time or to fill in. She ends up getting full-time jobs everywhere. My older sister's a nurse. She gives 110%. The people call her months after they've checked out of the hospital. They call her to tell my sister how she's doing. So my parents created, really great, honest, hardworking, empathetic children, and that has been a real gift in my career as well. So, for me, it's always been not how I look. It was always very important what was inside, and that was what I was projecting through the camera, was what was inside. It didn't matter what I was wearing outside. So in my personal life, because I'd go to the studio every day in sweatpants, I would go in sweatpants because they would only have me hold an ice cream and the ice cream would melt all over me, or, makeup and hairspray, everything, fell downwards. So I lived my first 20 years in the industry only in sweatpants, every movie, everything. And it was easier in the morning too. You just get up, put your sweatpants on and go. When you're working 18 hours a day, you don't really want to have to choose out of your closet.
Think about it, yeah. So I wonder, Carol, if we might go through some images of some of your work, and if you would talk us through.
Okay, so yeah, you guys had asked me if I would give you kind of a timeline of things as how they happened. So this was my very, very first shot with Jacques and Dominique Silverstein. And what was so great about this shot was I had straight hair. My hair was super curly, and these guys blew my hair straight, so I was feeling fabulous. However, John Casablancas, he did a little retouching on this picture, and if you see how my legs are outlined, he took just a little bit off of my legs so I would look a little thinner, because when I started working, I was 155 pounds and 5'8". At the height of my career, I was 5'11" and 115 pounds. So yeah, so he kind of shaved a little off. So these are some of the, just the daily, now everybody gets a contract with everything they do. But back then, I did all kinds of campaigns. I did the Obermeyer campaign. I also, with Bill King, I did Monet. And that guy in the Monet is actually my ex-boyfriend, Tom Fleming. So this was when we broke up. Bill King loved to book us together because he liked to see the conflict. But yeah, so these were just some of the things in 1980, 81, that some of the different campaigns that I did. And we just got a day rate for it. Of course, there was Noxzema. This was Courrèges. Courrèges was Bill King as well. And Bill had the walk. He did the Charlie Girl back in the day, and there was this walk. He always threw fans at you. So everything was about this big fan in your face all the time. And Noxzema was part of Covergirl, and I ended up starting with Lancome, but getting a Covergirl contract as well. You could stay there. It's fine. I'm going to jump. So Virginia Slims was. So here was the thing. Back in the day, you couldn't do cigarettes until you were 25. And I remember thinking, well, why would I want to do cigarettes? I mean, it's not really. I'm not a smoker. So, but when it came that they asked me to do Virginia Slims, several things were happening. One, I was already doing movies. And CoverGirl really wanted me to have another campaign, a modeling campaign to boost my CoverGirl campaign. Two, the agency was like, listen, this is $100,000 a year. So you're going to do it. And then three, I loved the pictures. They were just such free, beautiful women pictures. This was a Virginia Slims campaign, was aimed specifically at women. And then one day I was doing a radio show and they had a live audience and they took questions, and this guy stood up and he said, you said you'd never do cigarettes. And I said, well, I changed my mind. I mean, I was kind of forced, but not unhappily forced. And he said, well, that makes you a liar. I said, well, no, I'm a model. I mean, that's what I do. He said, yeah, but your face is well known enough. You don't need your name. And that changed for me. This Virginia Slims changed for me how I viewed my career. Because at this point, this was 1985, or it might have been 86. I realized that I was famous enough that my face was more important than my name. And if I put my face on something, it was an endorsement. And that changed everything for me. The other picture is Valentino, and that was shot with Francesco Scavullo, and that, of course, is the gorgeous Janice Dickinson. And Janice and I worked together a lot. She at one point came and lived with me. A little disappointed she didn't put that in her book, but yeah, she lived with me for 6 months. It was quite hairy to have her in the apartment. Okay, so this was Covergirl and Lancome. So Lancome was actually my first contract. I was the youngest worldwide representative of Lancome. I was 18 when they signed me. It was right before my 19th birthday in 1979. I was born in December, so I think I signed the contract at the end of November. And then they decided to take, I brought them to #1, which was really great. We were doing really well, and Patrick de Marchelier was shooting it, and I credit him for getting me that campaign. And they decided they wanted Isabella Rossellini. They wanted royalty. And so Isabella took the entire Lancome contract, and Covergirl immediately scooped me up. So from 79 to 91, I was never without a cosmetic contract. Back then, there were only cosmetic contracts, really. There were never really any clothing contracts like with they did later in the 80s. But in the early part of my career, Lauren Hutton was really the first girl who forced a contract. And she forced, I think it was Revlon, Ultima 2, it might have been Ultima 2, but it was for sure Revlon. She forced them. She said, if I'm going to work for you, you're going to sign me to a contract. And that was somewhere in the mid-70s. So by the mid-80s, we not only had that, thank you, Lauren Hutton, but I think the girls kind of after my generation started pushing for contracts with different designers. So, I mean, I was doing so many different different day jobs. It would have been really great if each one of those was some kind of contract. So in 1985, I started working in theater and my first job was Sweet Charity with Bob Fosse. And, you know, Bob didn't take me to Broadway. It was, at the moment, I was kind of disappointed, but I kind of understood. So he had decided that because Sweet Charity had been done over and over and over again, he wanted to change some little things about it. So he decided that Ursula, who was originally a very cute, sweet bombshell, oh, why you do this to me? And he wanted to make it a tough New Yorker. And it didn't really sit well with audiences. So he came to me and he said, you know, I love you for trying this with me, but we're going to go back to a Swedish sweet girl because the audiences really feel that better. But this is what I look like. This was a real hair wig. That wig in 1985 cost over $2,000. Okay, so this was the first, so when I first worked into the agency, there was a whole room full of girls, and the girls sitting behind the desk said, do not move. Because I was running into the agency, they said, we only see, they had these go-sees, they called them cattle calls. And cattle call was when the agency opened it up so that any girl off the street could come in. But they only did it till 10:30. And I was coming in from Long Island, and my train was a few minutes late, and I took a bus, and then I ran. And by the time I made it to the agency, it was like 10:33, and I'm like, we still see me, we still see me. And she's like, do not move. I mean, it was summer. I'm sure I was beet red and sweating. And she said, do not move. She said, let me get rid of all these girls. So she cleaned out the room. She said, come with me. Brought me in. I was sitting at her desk, and she said, who else have you seen? I said, well, I saw Wilhelmina. They wanted me to sign a contract, but my father didn't want me to because I had to give up 20% of all the money I earned, which meant my waitressing tips. So I'm not going to do that. She said, well, go see all these people. And then at that moment, Monique Pilar walked in, and she was the vice president of the agency. And she said, are you telling this girl to go to another agency? What, are you crazy? Chain her to the chair. And then she walked out, and she turned around, and she came back, and she goes, you're Sagittarius, aren't you? And I was like, oh my God, yes, I am. She goes, what cover do you want to be on? I didn't know any covers. I was not into fashion at all. I was like, well, my mom had a Cosmopolitan magazine once on the train, the auto train down to Florida. And she said, you want a Cosmo? She says, I will get you Sports Illustrated. I will get you Vogue. Cosmo's nothing. We can do that easy. So for me, Cosmopolitan was just kind of very cool because I had seen a Cosmopolitan magazine. And the one I had Rene Russo on the cover, and the other one I had Rosie Bella. So for me, Cosmo was it. So that was my first Cosmo cover with Francesco Scavullo. The second picture was that cover from my very first shoot, from the very first day with Harper's Bazaar. This was Harper's Bazaar Italia. And then you see it was the collections which they took me to. Sports Illustrated, what can you say? I need not say anything. Sports Illustrated. The red bathing suit was originally a Kim Alexis cover. Kim Alexis had the cover until the day before they went to press. And then they just, for some strange reason, just decided this was the cover. And what was doubly odd about it was on Life magazine, Christy Brinkley, who had been the Sports Illustrated cover girl, was in the same dang suit. Unfortunately, it looked better on Christy Brinkley because she was so much more sexy than me. I look like, you know, a little boy, for heaven's sakes. But yeah, that was the first one. And the second one was on the 25th anniversary issue. They did, like, the main cover was Kathy Ireland, and then they did all these covers with all the girls who had ever been on the cover. So this was the second. It was an auxiliary cover to the 25th anniversary issue. So I just wanted to show a little bit the differences. I don't know where the rest of the Vogue covers are, but I just threw out some Vogue covers. This was my first trip to England. I had never been out of the country. I was with Alex Chatelain, and we had 5 days with British Vogue in London, and I was staying at the Portobello where all the rock stars stayed, and I got deathly ill after eating lunch the first day. They brought in, I guess, shrimp or something, and I ended up with food poisoning. So we had a 5-day shoot. I had shot the first day. I spent 3 days with a doctor. They moved me from the Portobello. They moved me into the Dorchester, into the photographer's room. So there was terrible scuttlebutt about me and the photographer, but I was dead to the world. I was deathly ill. And then I got up the last day, lost about 5 pounds, felt fabulous because I was so skinny. And I went and I shot 5 covers and 15 or 20 pages of editorial all in one day.
Amazing.
So this was, I decided that I really loved my job and I really wanted to stay in it, but I started realizing by 1983 that I was doing more bridal stuff than Vogue. And even though I had a bigger name and people knew who I was and I was getting more money for my jobs, I kind of already knew. My father had said to me, listen, by the time you're 25, it's over. So I was in 1983, I was turning 24. So I was turning 23, sorry. And I just wanted my career to continue. So I had lunch with John Casablancas at this place called La Camilla up on 59th Street. And I said, I want to do posters. John got so mad at me. No, I'm not doing posters. I'm not doing posters. I almost lost a lot of girls because I wanted to do, no, I'm not doing posters. And I said, well, why not? And he said, because you're going to say I'm cheating you. And if I make any money, I said, John, if you're making money, I'm making 90 times the money you're making because you only make 10% of what I make. So I think this is a really good idea. No. He said, and he threw money on the table and he stormed out. And I was sitting with Monique Pilar, who was the vice president, as I told you before. And I said, Monique, what do I do? She goes, you get yourself a manager. I'm like, a manager? There's no models with managers. So I reached out to this guy named Gary Wishard, and Gary Wishard was working with the Bazaar, and he had made posters for the Bazaar. So Gary took me on, and I self-produced 5 posters. So the one actually on the, I don't know, I guess it's, the one in the teddy, not with the shirt, the one with the teddy was shot by Marco Glaviano, and it was one of 3 in the series that I used of his. That was my very first one. And Covergirl was a little upset because the shirt was a little bit see-through. I remember having the color separation and saying, can you just like color it in a little bit so they don't see it? I don't want to make Covergirl upset. And the second one was shot by Cal out of California, and he did my next 2 posters. He also did a couple of calendars for me, but yeah, so these were the things that Cal shot. Anything on the beach these were taken out of my calendars. So I wanted to do a calendar, and I brought the idea to the agency. And I remember I was on a shoot, and this girl's like, why are you still doing catalog? Aren't you like some kind of big name? And I remember freaking out and running to the phone and saying to the agency, what about my calendar? They said, oh, yes, no problem. You're going to be in the elite calendar. I was like, what? So they took the idea that I had come up with, and they did it with all the girls in the agency. And so I had to go out once again, and I hired somebody, and we self-produced like 5 or 6 calendars. I just kept going with them. So yeah. So then in 1985, after I worked with Bob Fosse in theater, I decided that, you know, I was going to go back to modeling. And I got a call from a director named Carlo Vanzina out of Italy. And Carlo said, I want you for this movie. I said, listen, I'm not going to audition. I'm a terrible auditioner. I'm not going to do this. He goes, no. I just want you for the movie. And the first movie he did with me was Via Monte Napoleone with Renee Simonson, and who was Look of the Year for Ford. And the first day we both looked at each other like we were going to kill each other. I thought, I got 2 more weeks of this. Ew. And he's like, oh my God, I got 2 more weeks of her. Ugh. And it ended up at the end of those 2 weeks that he came to me and he said, I have this amazing movie. It's called My First 40 Years. And it's just the story of this woman and her life. It's going to be tough. It's 15 locations and blah, blah, blah. I said, well, and that's the Elliott Gould picture on the top. That was from that movie. It became my first solo big film. I mean, it just broke all box office records. We had such a great time. So I just picked some movie stills that I thought would be fun because Elliott Gould, of course, and then Omar Sharif, that was Prince of the Desert. I didn't have one of Rutger Hauer that I could find in time, but it was Rutger Hauer, Omar Sharif, and Kabir Bedi, who was in 007, and I was the lead and the female. And then, of course, down in the corner was Billy Zane. That's Billy Zane down in the corner. We did something called Millions. I just saw him in Barabbas. He was fabulous. Okay, then there is George Segal up in the corner there. George and I did a movie called The Bear Called Arthur. It was a comedy. And for some strange reason, I had this picture with all the Chinese on it. Because, of course, all my movies went to the Asian Rim. They went to all over Europe. It's different now. It's completely different now. Now they do a movie, but they sell the script. Before, they used to do the movie and sell the movie and just dub it. But it's a whole different world now. So that was George Segal. And then, of course, down at the bottom was my next huge hit after my first 40 years. It was called Woman of Honor in Italy, but it was called Vendetta here in America. And that's Eli Wallach, Burt Young. I also did Nick Mancuso, who was Stingray in the 70s, was in it. And the second of those 2, I did Vendetta 2, was with Michael Onkeen, Eli Wallach, and Burt Young from Rocky. So it did so well, they did number 2. So I know you said that I had 2 books, David, and I didn't want to be correcting you, but I actually had 5 books on raw food nutrition. The first one was Eating in the Raw, and that was a bestseller. And then we did the Raw 50, and then we did Easy Sexy Raw. I wanted to do Easy Breezy Sexy Raw, but they didn't want me to. They thought it was too close to Covergirl. I was like, okay. So it's Easy Sexy Raw. And then A Healthy You actually came out of my television show that I did with Roger Ailes. It was on Fox. It was not the right place for Fox, but we still lasted 2 or 3 years. And that was the first book that came out. And I just basically went to all the doctors that were on the show and said, I'm just going to compile your information so people can look it up. And then I did one on cellular health with Dr. Giampapa. And then I did the 2 fiction books, yes. So, you know, I worked continuously over this June, it'll be 41 years. And I just wanted to show that, you know, hey, I still got it. So there I am on the runway last February with Dennis Basso. And it was very nice because they called me on Supermodels.com. They called me the queen. And you can go to the next one if you don't mind. And then I did Zhang Toy. Zhang is my buddy. He asked me to walk the show. He's never asked me to walk before. And both of these gentlemen, and of course it was his 30th anniversary. That's why he's blowing up the candles on the cake. Both of these gentlemen, I didn't take money for this. I work with a charity that basically takes animals off of death row. I work with the Best Friends Society, and I work with Denise's Rescue, and I donated any monies that I made from each of these shows to the charities.
Wonderful. Absolutely wonderful.
Okay.
And thank you so much for taking us through all of those. I'm sure it was difficult whittling it all down because you have such an amazing body of work, but thank you for that fabulous retrospective. So
Thank you, Mitch, for putting that together for us, right, David?
So in terms of, you showed us, thank you again for sharing all of the first moments of getting into the modeling world. Such a great story, and curious how the shift into acting came about, and how was it similar to modeling, and how was it different?
Well, the shift into acting was quite difficult because back in the 80s, nobody wanted models to be actors, and actors didn't want to do modeling. They did any commercial work in Japan or Europe. You just didn't cross the wires. And so it was very difficult because I would go for readings and auditions and I didn't have scripts. I remember reading for Cocoon. I didn't know she was an alien. I read for the Tawny Welsh part. I didn't know she was an alien. I mean, seriously, I know that Ron Howard wanted to see me on tape, but the girl erased me like 4 times. I had to go back, and never did she once tell me I was an alien. So it was very hard. What happened was, my agency was tied to a theater agency, because they realized that the girls had other ambitions. So they wanted to make sure they captured all of their income. So I worked with a lady named Davian Littlefield, and she would say, oh, when you're done work tonight or tomorrow morning at 5:30, you have to go to this audition before work. And, you would audition all the time. I went to audition with Bob Fosse, and he just kept changing how he wanted me to do it. So I just kept changing with him. And before I even got home, I got a call saying, do you want to go to LA and San Francisco with Sweet Charity on the Road? It's 5 months. It was the height of my money-making career as a model. And I had to make a decision. But since nobody was hiring me and I needed to make that one step, I thought I'll be in LA where everybody could see me, which almost was the worst thing that could ever happen, because I wasn't right for the part, because I knew that he was trying to change that part, as I explained before. But the big break came. And by the way, I took it because I figured Bob Fosse is not going to last very long. I saw what he looked like. I'm like, he's on his last legs, and I want to work with a genius. And I was working with a genius. Unbelievable. But when I came off of Sweet Charity, I had a call from this director from, I told you, Carla Vanzina. And what happened was he had taken my pictures to an agent and said, any one of these girls in this stack will do. And the agent was looking through it, and she starts to laugh. She's like, what, are you crazy? He goes, what do you mean? She goes, this is all Carol.Alt. And he said, wow, she could do that in pictures. Can you imagine what she could do in movies? And he was actually the one who gave me my first break. He put me in Via Monte Napoleone. We were both like, can't believe we have to do this for another 2 weeks. And we did 5 films together throughout my career. He was always coming back to do something with me. Actually, probably 6, because I did one in 2010 with him. So wow. That's how I broke in. But I took an acting coach with me. Very important.
Very smart. Yeah. Yeah. Is there a dream role that you haven't played?
I know I've done 65 films. I've done Women in an Iron Lung with the Rosanna Benzi story. With Billy Zane, I played a drug addict alcoholic. I played a nun. I mean, I've played it because I never considered myself the female lead. I always considered myself a character actress. A mafia princess and a socialite who was traveling all around Europe. A scorned woman. The character roles were what I really liked. I played 60 different roles, so I can't think of one role that I really haven't played.
Wow. Okay. Excellent.
Sorry
Excellent.
about that. Yeah, no, I
Oh,
just
that's
like
all right.
character. Yeah, for me, it's all about characters.
Well, speaking of character, you talked earlier about how when you're modeling, how the clothes inform the mood, the quote unquote character. Um, what happens, Carol, when clothes are taken out of the equation, um, like in the work that you did with Playboy? How does how would I say, when clothes are informing the scene, what happens when they go away?
So I've done everything from Anna Karenina to Playboy. I mean, Anna Karenina really was one of the major films where the clothes informed the character. I mean, she was stifled by her clothes and her life. When I did Playboy, now I had promised my father I wouldn't do underwear. Could you imagine how he would feel me doing Playboy? And my mother wasn't thrilled about it, but ultimately she came around because, for me, doing Playboy wasn't about the fact that I wasn't wearing clothes. It was about the purpose that I was there for. I had realized a long time ago when I changed my diet and my eating habits to eat cleaner, healthier food, that I could eat raw, unprocessed food and not only maintain great weight, but I could maintain great health. And in years to come, I'd had terrible health issues and was able to still be standing here to talk to you guys because I was very into the raw diet. And at one point I thought, I would not be here at 50 years old. That's when I did the cover. I was 50. And I wouldn't let them retouch it. I walked in and caught them retouching it, and I went ballistic. But it was about showing people what you could do. Even if you had terrible health issues and had to dig your way out of the pits, what you could do if you ate correctly. And that, Playboy said to me, we've never had anybody who wanted to use us as a platform. So they were totally into it. The whole article is about raw food and how I wouldn't be standing there to do this. And I wanted to do something that created waves because I'm always so politically correct. I'm always so white bread. I felt I needed a couple of chocolate chips in my ice cream, and I thought, well, I'm not going to make everybody happy. I'm always trying to make people happy. I said, I'm not going to make everybody happy, but at least they'll be talking about it. So the fact that I wasn't wearing clothes was so freeing in the sense that I threw down the mantle of political correctness. I threw down the mantle of, being the first, because I always like being the first with posters, first with calendars, first with exercise videos. Playboy had asked me to do the cover in 1985 when I was doing Sweet Charity. And Monique wouldn't let me do it, and then she gave it to Paulina. So I wasn't the first model on the cover, but I was the first to take a stand about something. And I was really trying to do something that would make people talk and talk about why I was doing it, not just the fact that I was on the cover. It was why I was doing it.
Wow, fantastic. Fantastic. I'm going to open up to questions from our wonderful audience. So if you have any, please send them our way. I'd also like to ask you, when it came to the books, how did the books come about? How did they evolve? And are you a disciplined writer?
I didn't want to do books. I never wanted to be the raw chick. But you have to understand, back in 2004 or 2003, when I wrote the first book, I was talking about health and nutrition, and there were people looking at me like I was nuts. You're a stupid model. You shouldn't be talking. Health has nothing to do with nutrition. Nutrition has nothing to do with health. You can't believe the things that people were saying to me. And I realized that there was a real problem, a real disconnect. And I thought, well, I was pitching another book. Bill O'Reilly had told me I should do a book called The Sophisticated Woman's Guide to Survival. And I had written that book and nobody really wanted it. When I went to see Miramax, they said to me, well, what's the best chapter in the book? And I started talking about raw food. And they said, that's what you're passionate about. That book we'll buy. They didn't even get a chance to buy the book because the next pitch, we pitched a raw book. You know, we already had a pitch lined up, an appointment, and the raw book sold. So I really believe it was providence. I really believe that God, whatever benevolent being you believe in, I believe that he was trying to start a ripple that became a wave, that became a tsunami. Because now you can't talk about health without talking about nutrition. Everybody, even on my show, I was shocked. Every doctor I had on the show, when the last question of the interview would be, well, what do you think is the most important? Everybody would say nutrition. What you eat is so important. And I was an alternative show doing all kinds of crazy things like coffee enemas and whatnot. And people were, you know, coming to the same conclusion I had come to 10, 15 years earlier.
Amazing.
Yeah, it just happened. I think there was just, God wanted it done, and I was a tool in his hands.
So Daniel writes, he asks if you were aware that you were business savvy in the middle of your career.
No, I don't even know it now because I've made a lot of mistakes. I consider myself the Babe Ruth of modeling and acting. I swing at everything. No, I didn't really. I mean, I went on passion. It was, I wanted to prolong my career, so I did posters and calendars. I wanted to, you know, throw it in the face of people who said I couldn't act, so I became an actress. I wish we had back then some of the, I don't know, the opportunities that the people have today. Certainly I wish we had the money, but yeah, the opportunity, because, you know, back in the day, nobody called you a brand, and now everybody's a brand. So we've gone to the other end of the spectrum. But no, I had no idea. I was just trying to keep going in the business that I loved.
And Tanya asks, at what point did you get on Instagram and build your following? And is someone managing this, or are you doing it yourself?
This is a very involved question because I was first on Twitter, and then everybody's saying, oh, you got to do Instagram, and I resisted. And then I went on Instagram. And then last year, my Instagram was wiped out.
Oh, no.
Yes, because I'm very verbal about health and nutrition. And I guess it went in the face of some people. And so I lost 100,000 followers last year, which when you have 200,000 followers, it's half of your followers. But I've been managing it pretty much myself. I had, you know, people here and there help me or give me ideas or take the load off. But no, I shoot all the videos. I do all the photos. I write all the stuff. You know, if you have any suggestions, I'm all ears. If you have friends, have them follow me, please. I need help. But yeah, no, it's
so interacting with you there is literally interacting with you, which is
literally interacting with, which is why, you know, sometimes I don't get to the DMs all that often because, you know, I'm doing comments. There's 150 comments. I'm trying to get to all the comments. I'm at a shoot. I've got an opening tonight. I mean, and then of course you want some part of a real life outside of social media and photos and openings. So yeah, so sometimes I don't get to everything, but yeah, it's just me. That's why. And my fan mail too. I you know, it goes through my management company, and of course they send it on to me after they scour it and make sure everything's okay. Then it goes on to me, and then I answer everything I get.
Wonderful. Wonderful. I'm sure your fans appreciate that very much. Holly writes in and asks, whenever she was dipping her toe into modeling in New York, she found that the waiting rooms had a cold vibe and kind of a dark energy in the room. And she asked if that's something you experience. And she also says,
I think I contributed to it.
no, oh, it's all your fault.
Well, go ahead.
She,
Ask the second half and then I'll get to
she
it.
comments that it seems like that you were able to maintain your uplifting energy in a situation like that. That's her premonition.
Well, when I was doing auditions and go-sees as a model, the agency was a very big part of everything I did. When they told me, if somebody approaches you on the sidewalk, do not go with them. If they're real, they'll go through us. That had saved me from a lot of molestation and probably, other bigger issues. Anybody approached me, I said, you go through my agency or you don't go at all. And you could tell who was real and who wasn't. And one of the things the agency said to me is, when you go into an audition, do not speak to the other girls. First of all, you don't want to break their concentration. A lot of times you're running lines. And you don't want them to sabotage you. They'll just talk to you and get you out of it, because they're trying to get the job too. And I mean, it was good advice. I don't think those rooms were really meant for girls to congregate and be social. I think it was meant for you to prepare and warm up. You're all there for the same job. So, there's a lot of competition for it. But I do remember one time I was really sad. I wasn't nice. It wasn't that I wasn't nice. I just got startled. Kate Capshaw, Steven Spielberg's wife, was a good friend of mine. We had been at a house in the Hamptons together. I knew her boyfriend, she knew my boyfriend, and we ran into each other at a casting. And she came over to say hello. And I was like, I was taken aback because I didn't know if I was supposed to answer her. I was like, hi, how are you? But I wasn't like, hey, how you doing? I was like, yeah, because we were told, do not interact with the other girls. So I think that probably contributed to the cold feeling of the room. But in my brain, I was there to focus and to get a job. So I didn't really think about it.
Interesting, because typically, like, when you're acting or something like that, you have a dressing room, so you have that kind of away space to,
you would think,
but well,
you would think, David, but no,
in a public area where a lot of people are waiting, that would make total sense that you kind of need to kind of create a curtain around you, if you will.
Well, I did a lot of films, low budget films, even high budget films. I remember shooting the story I told you, The Woman in the Iron Lung, and we were shooting in a hospital, and I was in an area that was a giant dormitory and everything was echoing, and I was playing a woman in an iron lung, and it was a lot of dialogue and a lot of mechanical stuff to do. And the producer said, yeah, you don't have a private room, but it's funny when this goes on the screen, nobody knows you had a problem. And I thought, wow, I would think that you would want me to be able to do the best work possible by giving me just some quiet space but you don't always get the best circumstances. And I think what separates a pro from your average person is a pro will step up no matter what. I've shot with a flu, I've shot with no private room, I've shot without clothes. So you understand, if you're a pro, you just get the job done.
That is wonderful advice for everyone. Catherine asks, as a raw foodist, what is your guilty pleasure?
Listen, I'm not 100% raw. I know people think that I am, and anybody who tells you they're 100% of anything is 100% of a liar. There's no way that you could stay on raw food all the time, because sometimes you're at somebody's house and you don't want to insult them. Or you're at an event and you haven't eaten all day and there's no raw food. I mean, I live my life. I am not one of those people that go, you had popcorn. Hey, I had popcorn at hockey games. But I'm smart enough to know if I have popcorn at hockey games, I pop enzymes so I can not use up my own enzymes to digest it. But yeah, I mean, guilty pleasures, I mean, I eat cooked food every now. I'm probably about 90% raw because I had health issues. It's better. The more raw I am, the better. But, there are people who, 75 to 95%, you can really change your life. So don't try to be too strict is what I'm saying. Enjoy yourself. Know what your guilty pleasures are. Know what your cheats are. One thing I won't eat at all is gluten. I mean, that I will not, because it immediately goes to my sinuses and I can't talk and I have a sore throat and it's terrible for me. But I do eat other kinds of cooked food.
As someone who is admired by so many, I have to ask, who do you admire?
Are they asking me that or you, David?
I'm asking you. It's me talking.
I was complimenting you. I admire people who fight against social injustice. I admire people who fight for the rights of the weak. As you know, I work with animal charities. I mean, there's nothing weaker than an animal stuck in our world. So I have a lot of people I admire you probably never heard of before. Denise, who runs Denise's Rescue. She's dog walking to take care of 50 cats, I think she had at one point, and 10 dogs. I mean, people tie a dog to a fire hydrant and walk away. I admire people who believe in something and they work every day and go to the end of the line to do that. Oops, I got a kitty here. Come on. It's on my computer. This is
the cat wants to be acknowledged as someone that you admire.
Yeah, this is Sammy. This is my first rescue.
Hello. Hello.
He's my sweet boy.
So my last question, Carol, because I to tear myself away, this is hard because you are delightful and insightful and incredible.
Oh, thank you.
But what would the Carol of today say if she could to the Carol going on that first day of go-sees? What advice would she give her?
Well, listen to the agency, because that kept me out of a lot of trouble. But I think also that, it's going to be okay. Just remember, it's going to be okay. And enjoy the ride. I mean, there were days I was working so hard and weeks and months on end that I was just working, and I didn't have a chance really to enjoy. So 40 years went really, really fast. It went really fast. And also learn to eat correctly. I could have saved myself a lot of heartache if I had eaten properly, if I had understood how to eat.
Carol, thank you so much for being a part of this today. And I just want to mention that Carol will be with us live at the National Arts Club next season. So again, if you have not, take a look at the nationalartsclub.org website, and there will be updates there on when that is. And there are other programs in this Knack at Home series. If you take a look at the website or on Facebook. Carol.Alt, you are an inspiration. You are a force. You are charming. I could go on and on and on.
Not just me. This is it.
You are it. And I can see why so many have given you such illustrious titles over your career, because you really embody a wonderful, everything wonderful, all in one.
Thank you, David. I thank you, and I thank Mitch. I know this was a lot of work to put this together, so I really appreciate it, and your questions were really great. And thank you to the audience for their questions and for tuning in. And guys, be safe. Be safe. Opt on the side of safety.
Carol, thank you. And to our audience, thank you very much.